So we're so excited to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Love for coming on.
We love you. We've already spoken for an hour, guys.
I know.
I love this energy so much.
I feel like I know you so well.
I feel like I could sit here with you for hours on hours
Why
on
did we
hours.
not book more hours?
I don't know. I want to braid your hair.
Rookie error. Why are we not doing like back tickles in a circle? Like,
Literally.
what is wrong with us?
Where's that Pinot and Picasso?
I do not know.
We need that.
So would you please share with our audience a little bit about yourself and your journey, your career so far?
Oh my gosh.
It's a loaded question.
I know. And it's like I don't have a very clear straight line answer, but I feel like the best answers usually aren't a linear straight line answer. So I started off on a very conventional, traditional corporate pathway as a lawyer. I was a mergers and acquisitions lawyer, so thought
big
I was
dog.
so cool. I was wheeling and dealing. Like it was, there were some good moments.
Yeah.
But I, the question as a now corporate refugee, the question I get...
That's genius.
That's the group we've collectively given ourselves. Yeah. The question I get asked the most is, why did you choose law and, how do you feel about leaving it? And the thing I really come back to in hindsight is I don't actually think I ever chose that. I think like many people, I spent so much of my life being interested in lots of different things.
Yeah.
And being multi-interested and multi-passionate is a great way to get a lot out of life, but it makes decision-making very confusing and very hard. And there's so much pressure to like figure out your forever job and your forever purpose. And when you're at high school, you think you've got to decide forever, like for the rest of your life. So I really think I fell into law because I ended up going to a really wonderful school and being able to get good marks, and then...
So you're a super smart, high achiever.
So I've always been a bit of a like intense A-type personality. That's definitely not a secret to anybody. But I've always been, I kind of describe it as, I've always been equal parts nerdburger and arty-farty. So I was like the kid.
Obsessed with that.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a catchphrase.
Yeah. I think I'm more arty-farty.
Yeah. Well, it turns out I'm much more weighted towards that side of my brain. But I was that kid who was really sad on day one of prep when we didn't get homework. But I was
you were not.
I was like Devo.
Golden child.
Devo.
Okay, I need to have a child exactly like you.
But I was also doing concerts and drawing on, the great crayon wall graffiti incident of 1993. Like there was real arty side that did ballet. I was at the Australian Ballet for a long time. Like,
Are you kidding?
I'm actually 85. Did you not know? But I just used conserving beauty.
I was going to say,
it's amazing.
Yeah, you look good.
I'm on brand.
Get that on video.
Yeah,
We'll be looping that.
We're recording that. But I think all through school, all through primary school, high school, and even uni, I tried to keep both of those sides alive, which you can do.
Totally.
But then it became harder and harder to narrow down what does that mean? What does that translate to? And because I did end up getting a good enough score to do something with it, and I've always had this like intense, got to make the most of the opportunity. I'm not going to waste a point. Like if I've got good scores, I'm going to use every point. But I hated blood. I didn't want to do medicine. So I was like, well, I probably should do law because it opens more doors rather than
it's a
closes
wonderful
them.
degree.
Yeah, and I thought it'll be a launching pad for, my mum always said, if you don't know what you want to do, the time's going to pass anyway. So choose something that opens more doors later and allows you to like delay the decision making until you figured out what you want to do, which was the best advice.
Smart.
But I also think, this is such a long story, but I also think that one of the things that made me so fascinated by this idea of A, making the most of every opportunity, but B, how different things can be but for one sliding doors moment is that I was born in an orphanage in South Korea and adopted when I was 5 months old. So I kind of have always thought, I love dot points. That part of being a lawyer has not gone away. I've been given this sort of second chance that I don't feel like I deserved. I was a baby, like a blob. To live in the best country in the world, I have to make the most of every single minute to kind of earn my place here. But then also, my life could have been so different. So I've always been fascinated by like, I'll do law for now, but somewhere along the line, there might be another kind of turning point moment where everything becomes clear. And, eventually I was just waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, wow.
So I had an amazing time. I think a lot of people leave corporate because they hate it and because they're desperately unhappy and the hours are long, but I was not that person. I was the person I worry about more now. I think if you're desperately unhappy, eventually it'll get so bad that you'll go, I've had enough. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to leave. I'm crying every day. Your circumstances will force you to make a change for yourself. Yeah. If you're just fine, or just like, maybe
It's
this is
okay.
it. I'm kind of grateful for what I've got. I don't hate it. It ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
It's prestigious, successful. There's a pathway,
Yeah.
financial stability. There's certainty. No one thinks, oh, that lawyer's bludging. Like no one worries about you in that role. I worry about those people because I think
It's a really good point.
I could have just sat there forever thinking,
And live in this like
fine.
complacency.
Yeah, complacency. I was
Yeah.
like, this is
It's
good.
okay.
Yeah, I like
okay.
it. It's got highs. It's got champagne popping. I got to work in Hong Kong. It's got a small amount of suit style life, you know?
Yeah.
Like I
Yes.
did feel a bit like Meghan Markle for a little while.
Yes.
I wore a lot of Q that was very uncomfortable, that looked really sharp. Eventually ended up in runners, but like that's fine. The beginning was very glam.
Yeah.
And I think I really could have, particularly with a combination of gratitude and being around the smartest people you could possibly learn from, was like, okay, I could do this. Like
Yeah.
maybe this is life. Maybe this is it.
Yeah.
And without a sliding doors moment, I think a lot of people do sit in that
100%.
until they're 50, 60. And that's why there are midlife crises because people are like, what could have been? What else could I have done? And by then they're so siloed into, but now I'm only a lawyer. I only have those skills.
It's too late to change.
They feel like it's too late
and
to
it's
change.
obviously not, but that's,
Yeah, and it's never too late, but you can see how it becomes harder and harder the more you've committed your whole life to one thing.
So true.
Yeah.
So I would have sat in that for
Right.
whoever knows how long, but very random, happy accident. I like to now call it a happy accident because it was definitely not planned. My now husband, who became my business partner, has always been a serial entrepreneur. He's never had a job. He was the opposite, and that worked really well when we had different careers. But he had sponsored, his creative agency had sponsored YGAP. Do you guys know?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Youth Generation Against Poverty. And we got to go on a sponsors trip to Rwanda
Oh, wow.
and work in a school for a month, which was
Amazing.
incredibly life-changing.
Yeah.
But not the way I expected. I thought that particularly being, born in an orphanage and having that heritage, I thought I'd go, we are just so grateful. I'm just so grateful for everything we have, all the privilege we have, all the amazing technology and opportunities and running water and all the
Healthcare.
luxuries, healthcare. There is so
Definitely.
much that we have to be grateful for, which is, of course, one thing that you think. But the surprising thing was I saw a really pure happiness among people who had no markers of success as I understood it. And I was
Yes.
like, wait, you guys don't have jobs and careers and milestones and promotions and all the things I had learnt meant happiness
Yeah.
And meant success.
and meant success, but you're happier
Yep.
in many ways in an unburdened, obviously not unburdened, like there are big challenges that they face every day, but they could play with a leaf for like 6 hours.
And there was true joy in
And
that.
pure joy. And I was like, if you have the capacity to be happy, then maybe success isn't happiness. They're
Yeah.
related, but then not the same thing. So why am I climbing this ladder when happiness has never been a question? So that was kind of the first planting of the seed. And then came home. I ended up getting a gut parasite while I was there.
Okay.
It wasn't acute. I wasn't like throwing up or anything, so I didn't even notice. But slowly kind of crashed over the next 3 months, lost 15 kilos.
Wow.
First 5 kilos. Wow.
Wow.
First 5 kilos was like a great way to lose pounds. And then it just kept going. And
And you were like,
yeah,
hang on a minute,
something's
something's
wrong.
wrong.
something's up. It was just my digestion couldn't tolerate food. I didn't really notice because it was slow. No one around me really noticed because it was really slow and gradual.
Yeah.
And eventually my body just was like, you're not listening to what's going on. And I collapsed in the middle of a meeting, which was
No way.
like peak embarrassment of the corporate world is being in the middle of a meeting. And I literally ran to the toilet and was there for like 11 hours.
oh my
Whoa.
It was the worst. I kind of blanked it all out.
Wow.
But that was the beginning of like I'd kind of given myself adrenal
Yeah.
fatigue by pushing through. It also
Yeah.
showed how disconnected I was to actually anything about myself
Yeah.
versus
Right.
what I thought I should be
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And in the process, I was banned from coffee, alcohol, any kind of stimulants until I could get better,
Right.
rest enough, put on weight again, like learn how to look after myself. And that's when I discovered I need caffeine to do my life.
I was going to say, that's my
Fair
true
enough.
joy.
That is my real
Same.
my yay.
Me too.
And got sent to Hong Kong when I went back to work. And matcha there is everywhere.
It's
and
the best.
not the buzzword that it was in the West. Got really hooked on it over there and then came home, couldn't find it. We thought like, let's buy some for ourselves. It turned up, it was a pallet. It was like 2 million serves too many for us to use by the use-by date we worked out.
Right.
So we're like, let's sell some. And that's literally the sliding doors moment of like, I realised the ingredients and things, part of your brain that is needed to do business and to create a brand and a community and puns and names. And that's the bit that showed me, oh my God, you were born for this. This other thing is like level 6, 7, maybe 8 on a good day, but this is like 12 out of 10. You are so alive. And without that contrast, I never would have known there was another level.
Yeah.
But straight away I was like, this is it.
This is it. You knew in that moment, you're like, I am an entrepreneur.
I am a creator.
I'm a creator.
I'm that chick who used to like write books and make plays and force my neighbours to watch me do a concert. Like that's always been more
Show
dominant.
us these concerts later.
Yeah, I will. I'm so glad there was no social media back then because the footage would be damning.
The footage would be iconic.
It would be iconic.
It would be
I was
iconic.
definitely an icon. And that started.
So that was kind of the trajectory, and you started your incredible business.
Yeah.
First one.
First
business.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was 2015.
That was absolutely ahead of the matcha wave.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm like, we get it all the time. We get it like most days in the office.
And you
Love it.
couldn't get it
You couldn't
anywhere
get it back
here.
then. I agree.
One of the things I think you guys will now understand this more intimately is the fact that especially women, but many, many business owners, we attribute so much and too much of what happens to luck. You're like, we were just lucky. Like you forget to remember your talent and the hard work that you
Luck
put
takes
in.
you only so far.
Only so far.
No, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
100%.
Yeah, there's no...
Yeah.
But we happen to have this idea at a very, very lucky time. Like the Kardashians were talking about it, so free marketing. No brands existed. They were talking about matcha like it was sugar. They were like, we drink matcha. Like we drink black tea or we drink chai.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we drink prana chai or we drink
Right.
whatever. There was no brand.
Yeah.
So the marketing and demand was fine. The spot for it was there. The barriers to entry were quite low considering, and no one else was doing it. We had no competitors for a year, maybe a year and a half.
So you were just ahead of your time.
Dominated.
So we just went like,
You were smart enough to know that you were ahead
Yeah.
of your time, though.
I mean, I don't think we knew it at the time. Like telling the story backwards, I'm like,
Right.
we
You're
just
like, we were
slid right
geniuses.
in and like gap in the market. You
We
gotta
were
find
really
a gap in the
smart
market.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do your market research.
White
We did
space.
no market research. I didn't know what market research was. I just was like, I want this.
Yeah.
It is not here.
Yeah.
I am going to order it. Oops, I have too much.
The best businesses are the ones
They
where
start
people
that way.
they start that way
Yeah.
and they start from creating a solution to something that they didn't have.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
It's
if
a
I want
selfish
it,
endeavour.
Exactly. Literally, it's a selfish endeavor, and then everyone on the journey is like, well, hang on, I want that too, and you're like, oh, this is
Yeah.
a cracker of an idea.
Rather than reverse engineering, like I want a business.
Yeah.
What can I make a business out of? It was
That's
like,
probably why
I
it was
want
so
this
authentic
product.
as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And everybody that I know that has tried it, I mean, incredible.
Yeah.
10 out of 10. I remember when I met you years ago and you came and brought some to
Oh
the
my God,
office.
that's right.
Yeah, and we were supposed to share it with everybody in the office, and I didn't share it with anyone. And I took it home. I was like, guys,
Thank you.
I'm the matcha drinker here.
I am onto this.
So I won, and it was just amazing.
What was the response like when you first launched
Yeah.
it?
Amazing. It was like beyond what we ever could have imagined. We really, really thought we'll just sell what we've got and then go back to our merry lives. Like I kind of was a bit of a resume box ticker at the time, and I was like, I can start a business, sell a few bags, close the business, and then put it on my LinkedIn that I was a small business owner. Like, yay, amazing. And it was so insane and exponential so quickly that like we sold out in a week, and we didn't
Okay, that
even-
is insane.
Yeah, like a week, and we
That's
didn't have
insane.
the suppliers details because I was like, we're never going to need them again. It was this random farm in Japan.
The once of.
One shot wonder. I was like, we're not going to need you.
This will be so great.
And then the whole next, I would say, 18 months were just scramble. We're just like, shit.
Trying to get
Yeah.
supply.
Yeah, like how do you even ship big quantities? Like how do you deal in like paying in yen, and then like the whole like
Totally.
baptism by fire was, and I ended up leaving the firm 6 months later because I stayed as long as I could, but it just became like you do one or the other. You don't, there's no more hours. You have to go full time to make this work.
It's so hard to do the juggle of both jobs.
Yeah.
Like I did that. I mean, I can just so relate. Like I did that for almost 2
Ages.
years. But like as a type A personality, and I feel like we're very similar.
Yeah.
What kind of point were you like, okay, hang on, I'm now going off and doing this full time? Because it is so scary.
Yeah.
It's financially concerning just if you're used to having stable income and
100%.
everyone in your life's telling you like, don't quit your amazing lawyer job.
Yeah,
You're crazy.
yeah.
Like I can
You're
imagine.
fancy.
Yeah, I can imagine people said that too because people said that to me and I was no fancy lawyer. So what was that moment like where you were like, I don't care, I'm seizing my yay, I'm doing my business?
I think I probably used to make it sound a lot more like, don't work for the man. Like once you've found your passion, like take the leap and like self-doubt and just don't feel fear and do it anyway. And when I look back, I'm like, I actually didn't do that. I waited until the risk got smaller and smaller and smaller so that the jump was less and less scary. Because I do think there's something to be said for having something to jump to.
Totally.
So there, at the beginning we did sell out in a week, but at the same time there were two of us. Nick was running his own business. We could manage to do both as we built up enough demand to literally need to leave. So I waited until I was actually terrible, like a terrible employee. I kind of waited until the point where it was no longer, I wasn't serving anybody. Yeah. I could kind of split my focus and split my time. And I think one of the things I've always been good at is time management. So I was coping until the point where it was another kind of sliding doors moment. It was, I often will do as many options as I can until it's impossible to do all of them. And we got to the point where Urban Outfitters in the States had found us on Instagram of all places, and they were like, because no one else was doing it, they wanted matcha in their lifestyle section, and there was only one company in the world that had a cool logo.
No way.
So there was truly a gap, and we were just like there, this Melbourne couple in their garage packing
How
like
amazing
Breaking
is that?
Bad but green, like powder everywhere.
Breaking Bad.
We were like using drug scales off eBay. It was so DIY. Like the photos are
amazing.
not ever going to see the light of day, but and they put in an order. They wanted like a custom size, and we kind of figured out very quickly how we were going to make that happen, but we didn't have a packing facility that could do it on time for the due date, which was either you ship it to us by this date or
it's not.
It's not, not happening. And so I was like, the only way is if I take leave and full-time pack until the day that we have to ship it.
Right.
So I kind of took leave and then never went back because from then on it was a full-time. Like I thought I'd, spend the first Monday twiddling my thumbs, but there was already a full-time load of work to do, which also made the jump less scary because I think if I jumped earlier, I would have sat there like, what am I doing?
Now?
Like this is dead time. Like I don't have enough work to make this work. And financially we knew we had some purchase orders, so it wasn't as horrifically overwhelming as it could have been.
How amazing. And so that was 2015.
Yeah.
Fast forward now to 2023. I was going to say 2022. I was like, oh God, where am I?
I was literally like 2021.
Yeah, I'm like, we've lost a few years
like,
because
what's my name?
we all know why we've lost a few years. But like, what's that journey been like since that 2015 kind of moment through to now?
A blur, the best. It's been the most incredible couple of years. And I mean, the best word is roller coaster. It's such a cliche, but even you guys will know already that is running your own business. It's wild. You can't plan very much, or you do plan and then like nothing goes how you expected, but you learn in ways you didn't know you could, and your life is never boring. There's always an opportunity to figure out a new skill or meet new people, and you have the flexibility as well. Like I was so used to an environment where you had to get any new idea, like as in a dot point or one word in an email kind of new idea, approved by like 25 people, to if you have an idea, you just do it. And then the next day it's like, oh, it's on a shelf.
Oh,
like,
that is
so
us.
exciting.
That is us to a T. And don't you think like once you've got a new idea or you want to change something, you're so over everything else, you don't even want to look at anything else.
Ew, I hate our original
I'm like,
product.
I hate that.
Like, it's
the
ugly.
minute I'm like, well, we've changed messaging, I'm like, well, everything needs to have that message and I don't want to see the others.
Things move quickly.
Things move quick.
And it's been so exciting to I keep going to the A's and B's.
I love the A's and B's.
I
love the ABCDs.
Honestly, makes it so clear.
It's such a way. It's such a lawyer thing.
You're methodical, so you'd be loving this. You'd be wrapping this up.
It's very like my legal brain has stuck in terms of dot points. It's been such an amazing thing to do it with your partner and be working toward from totally separate careers to working towards the same goal.
That's why it's the same magic.
It was such a change, but so exciting. Very hard to transition, but very exciting. And we did Matcha for another 6.5 years, I think. And then about a year in, we started Matcha Milk Bar, which was
the best.
The
Those
cafe.
pancakes were everything.
Oh my God, it was the best.
In St Kilda,
In
right?
St Kilda. And that was, again, I kind of, at the time when I left law, I really thought I've found my passion. I've taken a big risk, pat myself on the back for the next 25 years, and this is it. And I really thought of success as this like static place I was going to arrive at, and then I'd stay there for the rest of my life and be happy. But I realized very quickly that actually your yay, now I call it your yay, once you find your joy or your passion, it's a jigsaw puzzle. It's like each year you add more pieces that you didn't know you needed, and you get rid of the old ones that you don't need anymore.
I love that.
And that changes
your
every
yay can
year.
change.
Yeah. And so I thought for the first maybe 2 years of Matcha that this was going to fulfill everything I ever needed to be, and I would kind of learn in that box, but that was it. But I realized really quickly it's all online. There's no people. The people bit is the bit that I love the most. I love meeting communities, and there was no way to do that when you're doing an e-com business. So the cafe was kind of an experiment to taste test flavors and spread the word of matcha, but also have a point of contact with a community, and also bring, like as we'll speak about, sustainability into the fore as well, because it was really hard to do that. You can't have a matcha farm with less water. Like there is no way. It's just the nature of the product. There are certain products that don't grow. They can't exist without, the packaging. It couldn't be sustainable and protect the product to have a shelf life.
It's very hard.
It's like impossible. So I was like, how can we integrate some other values that we want to, and having a plant-based cafe that sort of gently educated people about the sustainability of your body and the planet without being like vegan. And we weren't vegan either. We were like, this is just such a cool experiment, and that's when the Hemsworths got involved, and like our life just went on this crazy, amazing matcha mission. And again, I thought, okay, well, this is my thing now. Like this is what I do. But about 6 years in or 7 years in total, I also realised that in the background I'd been able to kind of do speaking gigs and start Seize the A as a podcast. And
Best podcast ever.
I mean, after Normalise Not Knowing.
Obviously.
Or maybe on par.
On par.
Sister podcast. And I realised that my new yay, as the business got bigger, I again started to get further away from the customer, because you start being in boardrooms and pitching and high-vis vest in the factory, and you never get to see the customer. So I realised it's okay to have a dream, and then a couple of years later your dream shifts a little bit.
Absolutely.
And it was becoming corporate. I was like, I'm literally corporate in my own thing. And I left corporate because it didn't suit me to be in this like bureaucracy. And then the conversations that you're having at a mass market level become all cost driven and not community based, and it just started to feel a bit funny. But I also found that on this sort of Spoonful page that had just accidentally become a thing, that I was talking about burnout and self-doubt and all the stuff that I was like, I can't say on Matcha Maiden, you didn't get your matcha because I had my period and I was in a fetal position. Like I can't talk about that there, but I can talk about it on my other page and have a more meaningful impact on other people.
And create a beautiful community, and people can connect and resonate
around the stuff that's behind the scenes, the stuff that's like, I'm having a crisis of confidence, or I think I'm shit because I'm comparing to this business owner. Like that became more meaningful for me, because the business felt very polished and very profity and very, it has to be.
It had to be.
But this was kind of balancing that out, and then that suddenly jumped out as like, maybe it's another leap. Like maybe there is just this stepping stone that you climb that's, you don't know is going to develop that way, but maybe this is calling me. And so there was kind of this time of, I don't think we're the best guardians for this brand anymore. The considerations that need to be taken into account are not our skill set. We've never had an FMCG business that's at this level. We don't have any experience to draw from at that kind of like major retailer, global major retailer level.
The whole scalability, profitability. I know exactly what you mean.
And what it takes to do that is also not the lifestyle that we got into this for. We're so excited by the story, by the year 1 to 3 of a business. Like that's our most excited area. And it's I did get a bit worried that I was just a bored millennial. I was like, do I just get to the hard bit and go, I'm out? But actually, I think it's okay to be like, my strength is this and my interest is this. And
I feel like from listening to you, I'm in such awe, but I'm equally thinking you are a true pioneer. I feel like you pioneered, it's true, I'm like, you pioneered this matcha space. And then you also, I feel like, were one of the first people to put yourself out there emotionally and connect with an audience by being real.
Yeah, by having mental breakdowns.
No,
probably.
But it's so relatable. Like, you can see a lot of creators these days try and be some part of what you really started. I feel like you're a true pioneer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I'm like, I'm in awe.
And it's been incredible to watch because, I mean,
I'm a huge
speak for myself,
fan.
but I've been following you for years.
Oh, you guys.
To see that.
And to see the journey.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a journey.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But also, you touched on something before, and I just want to backstep for a minute.
God, girls.
Sustainability.
Yeah.
Do you think at the time, I mean, now, right, if people start businesses, of course, you would hope that they're thinking about sustainability and getting a bit of a plan in place. Yeah. But back then, I mean, I feel like it wasn't really spoken about, nowhere near to the extent that it is now.
Yeah.
And greenwashing wasn't even a thing back then.
Oh, yeah.
But do you kind of remember in the early days, or like at what point did you start to go, well, hang on, is this sustainable? Like, packaging's a really good example, or even just like having visibility over like your farmers and whatnot.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I think the landscape has changed in such a good way.
Exactly.
Like, obviously greenwashing is problematic, but the fact that consumers are even paying attention to that kind of information, the fact that an audience even
cares.
Like, it's even possible to greenwash someone means they're listening to those kinds of messages, which they weren't. The demand among consumers was not particularly strong. Like, people just wanted a product.
Yep.
Affordability was a really big thing.
Definitely.
Still is.
Of course it still is.
It still is. But there's nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And of course, it's a privilege to be able, like, we knew that matcha is not a life-saving product. Like, if you can afford to have it for yourself. I mean, but if you can afford to buy a superfood, it wasn't cheap. And especially per 100 grams compared to regular green tea, it was exorbitantly expensive. So, it's already a privilege to have customers at all for a product like that. And we definitely did not feel pressure at the time externally to be sustainable, to have any. It seems crazy now thinking about it. Even to have any visibility over the supply chain, was just no one cared. Like no one even. We put that information out because it mattered to us, but no one read it. Like it wouldn't have mattered.
Right.
Yeah, and you actually were making all these decisions kind of based on values, but for yourself, not to prove a point for the community.
Which is a nice place because it's nice to not be reactive and only be doing things to tick a box. But I think it also, I don't know whether both of us I think in the case of matcha in particular, real matcha is grown in Japan and there are products that come from China, which are technically matcha, but it's not where it's from. It's not, the soil is different, the standards for agriculture and organic certification are very different. And so we already had, separate to like sustainability environmentally, just in terms of like the quality control, we already had like a bit of a choice. What do we want to do? Do we want to get like matcha that's 10% the price, but its heritage is Chinese, or do we want to go Japanese? And I almost think that when you don't have the expectation that you're going to go global or that you're going to have this huge scalable business, you make better choices because you can indulge those choices.
Yeah,
totally.
And we were very clear. I was like, I want Japanese matcha. I'm not going to bother.
I want it where it's natively grown.
Otherwise, I might as well just do normal green tea and get it from anywhere. Or it can be from India, it can be from anywhere. But the story around matcha is Japanese. So we'd already kind of made a decision that we'd pay more for it to be authentic. And then tied into that was also, I just personally care about the working conditions. And in Japan, it's a lot easier to get visibility than it was in China at the time. I kind of had learned Japanese and been on exchanges at school, so I felt a little bit more familiar with the culture and knew that the kind of the legal requirements and regulations were a lot stricter. And also we could go. So we went to the tea farm before we...
How amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'd already had a few orders, but as soon as we could, like maybe 6 months in, when I'd gone full time and I could not have to apply for leave, we went straight to the tea farm. We met the tea farmers. We met the family who owned it. We watched every process of the stone grinding and could, verify kind of that everything was how we expected it to be and the minimum standards that we would hope for. But yeah, it was a very personal choice. It wasn't.
Yeah.
You were rooted in ethics from the start. Do you know how
I don't know why.
That's what I was
do
going to
you know
say.
how brilliant that is that you even had that visibility? Because I would
100%.
say most brands don't.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were, again, pioneer. Look at me, tooting your horn. But seriously, that's a true pioneer values-based decision, and you guys were clearly far more ethical than probably majority at the time.
I'd love to unpack that a bit more, because was that because you felt quite educated in the space, or was it, do you think you just personally always had an interest in sustainability, or like what kind of drove that for you?
I think we both have always had quite an acute sense of legacy and the environment, and it's always had been something we both cared about naturally. We definitely, there will be people in our lives who are like, really? Like some of the things you do, like we're not sort of the greenies from the time we were born, and we don't have a worm farm. But
you don't have to be to care.
Which we will definitely get into. But yeah, it's always been something we've been quite conscious of. But I also think being a little bit more educated around it, coming from a legal background where provenance of anything is also like you can't verify a piece of paper unless it's come from 75 different verified sources. The whole idea of verification of things was more ingrained into my mind than maybe it would for someone else. But again, I think it comes back to profitability wasn't our first priority, because this was a hobby. And so I think when you do start things as a passion project versus a business project, which maybe financially wasn't the right thing to do, but as a passion project, you make choices that are more aligned with, well, if no one likes it, who cares? Because I'm not leaving my job here. Like I'm just doing this thing on the side. I can afford to pay a bit more, make a bit less profit, and it's what I'm proud to put out there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would have made those same decisions if I'd started out thinking I need to leave this career. Maybe it would have been different. And I definitely don't blame anyone else who does start. It's overwhelming. Like to find a supplier, let alone to find a good one, let alone to have the money to go and visit them. That's not something everyone can do either. So I think we were very privileged to be able to make those choices. And I can't 100% say that we would always have made those choices if our financial viability was on the line. But at the time, it was able to be a priority, and so we made it one.
How wonderful.
But having said that, we did know that water usage was not controllable. It wasn't a variable we could change. Yeah. And the packaging, we looked so extensively into recyclable, or even if they weren't degradable, just bags, like the coffee bags that could be reused for something else. And to keep the integrity of the product, it's so fragile.
It is so difficult.
It only has 12 months shelf life from the grinding, and it takes like a month to get here. So then it arrives with 11 months. Then we've got to get it to distributors, and they all want at least 12 months. You really couldn't actually sell it at all if you were going to go for anything close to degradable. So it was always, those were the things we couldn't control. So we were like, we have to control as much as we can around it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we all face those challenges every day, and I just feel like there is no such thing as a perfect packaging solution.
Yeah.
It's very hard. You have to make trade-offs.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think compromise is the best way you can go about any kind of sustainability decision, because it's better to do, like, if everyone in the world did 10% better, then no one would need to do 130% better. Like no one would need to go so drastic. The reason people do is because they're making up for everyone who's doing nothing or being the negative.
Totally. And I think we need to like shed light on that story a lot more. And that's kind of like, that was the purpose of this podcast, is to normalize not knowing.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't have these types of conversations, and then it makes people not want to engage at all, which is so much worse for our planet and the environment, because people end up doing nothing. But it's like, it's actually okay just to be doing a little bit. But I think there is this narrative of people who are, very passionate about the space, kind of control the conversations.
100%.
Which then scares people.
It can be quite overwhelming.
It's intimidating.
Quite intimidating. Yes.
And you do kind of feel a bit uneducated and like a bit of a Neanderthal.
You don't
like don't know the term, or you don't know the right thing.
Correct.
And that was exactly the approach we took with the cafe. Was we thought the overall vegan community can be very passionate and for good reason. Like there are so many reasons why that cause is so important, but it does intimidate the average person who's not going to ever change 100% of their behaviours, but that is the mass market who could make a big difference if they had 2 meals that are plant-based a week. And so we thought, like, how can we do the halfway approach, take really out any heated words, don't talk about animal cruelty anywhere so that you don't feel like it's being shoved down your throat. We're not vegan, so we're not going to be campaigning for you to change your label or your lifetime. We just want you to have some pancakes that don't have any dairy in it and see that they're yummy, and then leave and maybe you'll think about it. And I think that softly approach. I love that approach. It goes further.
I think so. I think it resonates far deeper, and I think it's way more accessible. I think it actually goes back to accessibility.
And the worst thing you can do is make someone feel stupid, because once they feel stupid, they feel defensive, and once they feel defensive, they won't listen to what you've got to say.
They'll disengage. Out of curiosity, did you ever feel pressure to be vegan or have a plant-based diet when you started the cafe?
I definitely felt the heat from the extreme end of the spectrum, from a, like, you're just trying to capitalize on this market but not walk the walk, you know, you're not fully vegan but you're capturing the money of people who are interested in this cause. And that was, I think, once you're really sure on what you're trying to do, it's easy to block that out, because I knew I wasn't trying to be a full-time vegan. I knew I was never going to do that. Or claim that. And I knew that those people weren't the people I was trying to convince. Because if you make a vegan cafe for vegans, they're already vegan. In terms of a change-making cafe, that's not going to change anything. The stats doesn't move the dial. I hate that phrase, but it doesn't move the dial. So I was already, we'd all made that decision. We were quite comfortable being the non-vegans who were going to have, like, we had non-vegan chefs as well. Like, some of them were non-vegan, so that they remember the taste of meat, so that the people who do still eat meat, their palate doesn't go, ugh, like, what is this cardboard? You know, they can taste something that someone who remembers that taste has compared it to.
Really clever.
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure from that end. And all of us actually did go through like a 3 month to 6 month. I think Nick even did 10 months of full vegan eating. But that was not because of pressure, but because we wanted to experiment. I was like, does my body like this?
Yes.
Like,
do I feel better?
Do it? Is it as hard as I make it seem, or am I just lazy and I don't want to change because change is hard? I don't want to learn new recipes. Am I really, does it really not fill you? You know, all those kinds of things. We thought it would be a good time to kind of, test that out, and it did not agree with my body. I just didn't get enough protein. And I also think part of that is heritage. Like, being adopted, it's a weird position, but one generation ago I was like entirely fish-based diet. So I didn't grow up. My heritage was not Australian eating. So I don't know, like, what my body's needs are. It wasn't particularly great for me. So I stopped. Nick lasted a lot longer because he was surprised by how much he could train and he could get enough protein and he was full. But in the end, we were like, we just think that there's a way to eat sustainably and source sustainable meat products and do it halfway or 75% of the way and still make a big impact. In the end, that pressure kind of calmed down once people realised, oh my God, you are making mainstream people eat vegan food that they would never eat before. And this is cool.
Me at the time, I feel like that was probably the first vegan cafe I went to. And I remember having the eggs. And I was like, these are great. Like, I didn't know.
You don't really know.
No, I didn't know.
Chicken, like, people don't really notice.
No.
And that was awesome.
It was awesome. Even if people do, like, 1 day a week.
Yeah. And like, even once a month, there's still more than nothing.
Definitely.
So it was definitely the gently approach, and people got on board with that eventually. And, like, the really, really hard thing was that it was a very expensive cafe. Like, once you do take out the sort of mass orders of certain products, and you have to have high grade vegetables. Like, it's actually, you think that not having meat on your menu would be cheaper. It's actually not at all.
Especially if you keep leading with all these ethical decisions.
So
everything costs more.
And it did become a very expensive place to eat, which was really difficult. But so was a smashed avocado. With feta. So that was just a side product of Melbourne brunch scene.
Right.
Totally. Okay, so fast forward, you've built this kind of epic loyal, loving community, which is so hard to do, by the way. It is incredibly hard to create a network of people that love and adore not just you, but the people that they can kind of meet through following you. Yeah, I just feel like now that you've built this kind of epic, wonderful community, obviously part of that comes a little bit with content creation and the most hilarious TikToks and reels I've ever seen. But part of that kind of feeds into like brand partnerships and brand sponsorships. And I'd love to know from your point of view, when brands come to you, does sustainability kind of ever come into the conversation?
I'm so sorry.
Are you laughing?
No. I'm like,
what's funny?
I'm like, she's laughing at me.
I know. I was like, I don't get the joke.
You both looked at me like, yeah. And I was like,
you're okay.
No, she's gone. And I'm so sorry. I just like, do not interrupt her flow. Do not interrupt.
But basically, when brands come to you and go, Sarah, we love you. We'd love you to promote our product. Do you ever think about sustainability when it comes to that?
100%.
You do? Okay.
I think it's become one of those filters through which every decision that you make, especially when the things that you do, I think having an audience brings with it a huge amount of responsibility, especially when you know that they actually pay attention to what you say.
And they trust you.
And they do take the things you say quite seriously in some cases and then put their money behind it. And that's a very big responsibility. So there are definitely kind of a list of values that I want every brand partnership, or even just the things that I post that I'm wearing.
Oh, you actually like.
Yeah, or that I like or that I use, or I want them to all go through a kind of triage process to make sure. I mean, sometimes it's not often like a conscious box ticking thing. It's just before you buy it and then you're going to wear it in public, you sort of think about that. And I'm definitely not, like, I will openly admit there are things in my life that friends would be like, okay, there's a lot of plastic in your house. Like I'm a softly do what you can do, remember as often as you can remember.
Try and make the best decisions you can.
Try and make the best decisions you can. And there are always compromises, and there are definitely parts of my audience where the last thing they care about is sustainability because they can't afford to think about anything else. And that I never want anyone to feel alienated because I'm like, if you don't use the most expensive BPA free blah blah blah, then you're a shit person. So it definitely is a value I align with and try and really make a priority, but I also want to be that person who's a safe space for as many people as possible. So one of the things I find very, very difficult, and I haven't actually spoken about this that much, but we talked before about not having trolls. I have the great privilege of somehow having over 100,000 followers, and I have never had a terrible troll.
It's because you're so likable.
Which is lovely, but it's at the expense of not using my platform for certain topics that I would like to.
Okay.
Where I consciously think I can't engage in this without creating stress, anxiety, and conflict for people who come here. They come to CSVA to hear a really unbiased, open investigation of all different lifestyles. Yeah. And, if I'm going to have someone we've had so many experts in sustainability on the show with beautiful sustainable businesses, that I also don't want them to think that I'm going to think they're a bad person if they can't afford that brand.
Definitely,
or if they don't necessarily care that much in their, not that they don't care, but that they can't make it a priority.
Yeah.
And same with sexuality and religion. Like I tend to try and have guests from as many different areas and interest groups as I can, but without it being an advocacy platform. Like I want to spread awareness, but I really try and not make it controversial because people's heart rate goes up when they listen to stuff like that. And you have to decide where you want to see it. I could have a million followers if I was more controversial. I could hammer home the orphanage, adoption, disadvantage, privilege, Asian Australian, person of colour. There's so many things I could have been political on. But I decided I don't want that for my own personal life because I'm terrible at conflict myself, but also because I want the audience that I have to feel a certain way when they come here. So it's
more an uplifting, inspired, positive, safe space rather than a divide.
Yeah, but use the responsibility in a responsible way. Like, don't just go like, here's a lot of plastic.
Yeah.
Let's use brands that use the maximum amount of plastic in their packaging.
Like, you're not pushing Shein.
Yeah. Like, I'm not pushing Shein or like Princess Polly or like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But I also, and you know, I will put more airtime into the points about a brand that contribute to sustainability. So there are lots of brands that are making compromises. There are huge parts of their business that aren't sustainable, but there are huge things that they are doing that they're putting money behind that are a halfway compromise that they don't have to do.
Strides.
Yeah, I'll maybe concentrate on that messaging a little bit more to sort of show what the impact is of you choosing them over someone else. But I still do try and do it in a gentle way. And we'll openly have like a coffee cup in the background. I have keep cups. Sometimes I forget them.
Yeah. Everyone does.
But I won't.
Story of my life.
I used to be paranoid. I used to be like, you want to take that story down? Like, you've got a water bottle in the background. And like, you know, we recently traveled to Egypt. You can't not have plastic water bottles. You have to have fresh.
It's when you can, when
packet.
you can't.
You can't control that. But I traveled with a company that's a B Corp. Like, you know, there are things that you're doing that are always evening out as much as you can without thinking like, if again, coming back to that, if you don't have a worm farm, you're a shit bloke. Like,
No.
you can't do that. You know? Well, you can, but that's not what my approach.
Yeah.
I think that's so wonderful.
Yeah, totally. And obviously I think you have a very balanced approach then to like influencing and sustainability. What do you have to say about influencers who choose not to partake in any, I guess, form of sustainability or who are only promoting fast fashion brands? Like, do you think they have a responsibility to engage more with sustainability, or are you kind of like, you do you?
I personally think that once you do have an audience over a certain amount, I don't know what the number would be, or even if you know or have evidence that they buy stuff when you tell them to, I think that does come with a certain level of responsibility to spread messages that really don't disadvantage anyone in the world. Like, no one is going to be seriously disadvantaged by the world being more sustainable, like by the planet lasting longer and by our environment being cleaner. Like, it's not a controversial thing that the world is not having the best approach to plastic. Like, you know, there's certain facts that are not very controversial and that we all probably have a responsibility as human beings, with or without influence, to make a bigger impact. So I do think, I think there's a bit of an attitude that like, it's my life, like just because I have influence and just because what I do has given me an audience, I don't have to use it for anything, which is absolutely true. It's like a capitalist society, you're allowed to do what you want.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want. If your livelihood and you pay for your kids' schooling by doing fast fashion promotion, like fine, that's totally your prerogative. But I think maybe you could balance it out with something else. I think it's not hard to weigh something against the other things that you do. You don't have to quit fast fashion altogether, because again, there are some people who can only afford
and there is
those
nothing
price
wrong with
tags.
that.
And there are also businesses that I know that would sink if, like, beautiful small businesses that are doing wonderful things for female empowerment or other messaging. Sustainability is not the only message that's important in society.
Multiple values.
That are conflicting. And so, and they couldn't survive if they could only use sustainable fabrics, or, you know, like the Australian market for manufacturing is small. There's not a lot you can, if you want to be Australian made and you want to be sustainable and you want to be like affordable, you know, there's not a way out of the situation. So I think you can't judge people who are making certain decisions, but you can judge them for not choosing to balance it somehow with something every now and then. And that's become, and like, to be fair, there are probably things I've done that people who watch everything I do and remember, I have terrible memory, who are like, yeah, but you did that thing. And like, I would 100% be like, guys, I have said I'm not the best. Like, there are times where I do stuff, like my Uber Eats consumption. One of the questions was, where do you consume the most? 100%.
Yeah, where do you consume?
It's food.
Me too, by the way.
100%. Like, fashion, it's an easy choice for me. Like, those decisions in my life easier. Food, I'm the worst. I'm like, I need my food. Like, I need to eat. It comes in this, what am I going to do? And it's becoming easier. Like, most people package things in biodegradable packaging. It's a lot better than it was. But I still think if you can balance it out in some way, and especially if you know people are putting money behind what you do, like, do something to to balance out the other things that you choose to do that have that sustainability isn't a consideration.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
Speaking of like just consuming and gifting and all that kind of stuff, you would probably get gifted every day. I mean, you'll probably get gifted shortly by us.
Thanks, guys.
You're running low. We'll top you up. But like, have you ever thought about like any insane PR package that you've received where you've gone, whoa, this is a bit OTT?
I think it's a really unique to our generation situation where people are gifted a lot of stuff and it's so weird to talk about that you get gifted every day. And so strange to even say anything other than that's a huge privilege.
Yes, it's lovely that people want to
lovely.
gift you.
It's so kind. It's great marketing. And I'm very much like, even if I didn't, you often get on mailing lists and things arrive unsolicited because your address is on and that's like, again, loveliest problem to have, but you don't really have a choice if it's sustainable or not. You often don't have a choice what it is. And I think someone has gone to the effort to use that. I'll always try and do a story or something to acknowledge it, but you can't use like 85 shampoos. Like there's just not that many. What are you gonna do? My hair is like dirty, but it's not that dirty. I wash my hair, but I don't wash it that often. And I think that is very difficult because sometimes you do think this is so excessive. I'm not going to use it. It did, use a lot of resources to get this here, but it's already here. Like you can't undo
so then what
that.
What do you do with it?
So I do a lot of, there's a St. Vinny's up the road from us. I'll take like 7 garbage bags of stuff.
Smart.
And donate it or do giveaways or, we had this event at Pinot and Picasso where 30 amazing members of the neighbourhood who hadn't met each other and over half came by themselves came to have an in real life just a lovely night together. And so I gave every person there, I was like, I have 100% have 30 unopened amazing beauty products
that's so clever
that I just can't use. I can't get through. Like I love the products. They're great quality. They're expensive and they're like, going to go to waste. You can't use 25 serums a week.
Totally.
Like you
just
can't.
It's excessive consumption.
But to someone who never uses that serum, it's like this excitement. So I save them for things like that. Or, when we had the lockdown periods in Melbourne, we made care packages for nurses at hospitals and had people do nominations of healthcare workers who were having a really shitty time and put together, we just split so I just put all the gifted stuff in a certain bookcase at home, and then when there's an idea of a way to use it, we'll just put big hampers together and send them out, and people were so excited. Like it made such a big difference. But then it wasn't wasted either. It also wasn't thrown out. And
you put them to good use.
And even sometimes you get to the op shop and they don't need stuff. Like sometimes they're just like, I don't need any more of this stuff. Like then it's a burden to them to get rid of. So sometimes I just hold on to it and think like someone will be having a shit day and I'll make a little hamper. But it's hard when you're like, this used a lot of materials to get this here. And but there's, I think also not a lot you can do about it when it just arrives. So it's like, how are you going to pass it on and make something of it? But there are definitely times when things come and you're like, there are so many much more affordable biodegradable packaging options now, like Australia Post even their default some really good choices. You can make really good choices and it's no longer triple the price. So sometimes it's a bit like, come on, 7 plastic bags.
What am I going to do with
one small thing? Like you do notice more and more, and I think people who wouldn't have previously noticed now also notice when they're unwrapping something and they're like, ugh. So I found almost everything now that I get, the outer package usually at least
is at least
now recyclable, which is amazing.
That's
a huge
step
change.
Up. I was going to say that's a
huge
step
change.
Up. What about all like the events you go to? Because I feel like again, you're probably on everyone's hot list at every cool party,
which is again such a privilege. Most of the time, I'm like, well, why the fuck am I here?
We know why you're there. Do you ever go to these things and you're like, oh gosh, it's just like over the top with my name in a plastic something, you know what I mean? Or like even other influencers that go to these things. Do you guys talk and you're like, oh gosh, they're really
sometimes
bit of a rogue move here.
Sometimes you do get a very overwhelming sense of excess. You get a really big sense of privilege of like, this is so cool, and like we're all consumers, right? Like huge activations are so cool. Like sometimes you're like, sometimes they are. But I think generally lately people are a lot more conscious of, you know, things won't be packaged in outer plastic. They'll be personalised, but they'll be sunnies. So like you're going to wear those again. Like, you know what I mean?
It's not like silly things anymore.
It's not as, I think like what I've noticed is like if they have fans at an event, it will be a paper fan. It won't, and a paper and wood. It won't be like a plastic gimmicky thing. I found recently the events that I've gone to, the takeaway things are not as plastic and
as
a
they
little
once
bit more
were.
Much more
reusable,
conscious.
or they have another purpose. Like it'll be a bag, but you can reuse the bag. It's not, and even like you can see they use a huge amount of these massive installations, but a lot of them you could reuse them. So I personally feel like it's a lot better.
Moving in the right direction.
But I do feel like people who I wouldn't necessarily expect to notice and be like, there's a lot of plastic there.
They'll point it out.
Yeah, we have had conversations like that.
It's
that
good
I wouldn't
to know that
is
like
good to
people
know.
do talk about it.
Some people don't notice, but some people do, and they get like funny about it, or they get like, I'm not going to take that because I'll never. It'll just go into the bin. So, and I think also businesses are noticing that they don't want to give you anything now that you're not going to love or take home with you. So the merch that you get is cool and reusable because otherwise they'll end up with it.
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
So I think there's a bigger move to be better in that regard. It's less hugely wasteful plastic confetti falling from the sky. I don't think I think people, they get like criticism if they do
exactly.
that.
I don't think it's what consumers or influencers want.
Yeah. Even if the influencers themselves aren't complaining, like if it's posted anywhere on social media and people see, if they saw plastic confetti, you would get torn to shreds.
Because it's just
which
like,
is a good thing.
Yes, that's just so unnecessary.
Yeah. So you even see, like we had something recently, I can't even remember what it was, but it was like glitter, but the glitter was biodegradable.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, even the fact that you've told us the glitter is biodegradable is cool because you
We've
know
come
that
such
we
a long
care
way.
that the glitter's, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. I'm like,
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, good one.
I wouldn't have asked, but now I'm like, wait, it's not degradable. And then I was like, what is that? And then I was like, mica. And then I've learned all this stuff about biodegradable glitter. And one of the
how
things,
child slavery to
yeah,
glitter.
like the things you just don't even think about. But
so
one of the things that really kicked me up the butt recently was I went to Antarctica in December.
Wow.
And it's like the most remote place in the world. It feels like Mars. It is so far away. And it's so far away that you are sailing for 2 days, 48 hours before you're even in Antarctic waters. There are no humans. If someone has a heart attack, there's no
hospital.
There's no runway
Yeah.
to land a plane. The helicopters don't have enough fuel to get that far. So the whole boat has to turn around and go back. Like that's how remote you are. Which is kind of freaky.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Amazing.
But there are microplastics in the water.
In Antarctica?
In Antarctica. And that made me like,
Wow.
there is nothing. You cannot save a human being who has a heart attack at the other, or you can obviously, but you can't, there's no quick fix. It's that far away.
Right.
Yeah.
That you have to turn 200 passengers back around and still there's no human activity. There's no buildings, there's no shops.
Crazy.
You can't like before you put your boots on land, which is not every ship that does that, you have to what are they called? Do biostability, like full disinfecting everything. You're not allowed to put your knees on the ground. Someone proposed and they couldn't get down on their knee. They had to hover in a lunge. Like you can't wee. You can't do, if you camp on the thing, you can't wee anywhere. Like you can't leave anything.
They don't want to disrupt the ecosystem.
Right. But yet there's still
microplastics in the water, like at the furthest point, and that makes you just think like,
that is.
And when you're there, I'm like, this is the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
like
we are
the
so
middle
remote.
of nowhere.
You
It takes
don't
21
realise.
days to sail from Hobart if you go from Australia. And how is there plastic here?
Yeah.
Like how?
Yeah.
And that really made me.
It leaches in everything.
Yeah, like we can't unplasticify that water. And there is no further that you can go. Yeah. So at some point that has to translate into what you do here.
Yeah.
But it's really easy to get detached from that until
Mm.
you go there. Even I went there, came back and forgot and used plastic the next day. And I was like, that...
Yeah.
It's
But
hard.
it's hard.
And then it's also, it's really an overwhelming feeling, right? Because then you start to think, oh my God, it's everywhere. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, it's already
We're
done. I might as well just keep using it.
Exactly.
But then it's like, well, actually making all these other small choices throughout your life end up having a compounding effect and impact your choices for the better. So you don't even realize all the other things that you're doing right are actually kind of helping you on
Overall.
that journey. Overall.
Yeah.
Kind of comes back to that balanced perspective.
Yeah.
And like nobody lives a perfect zero waste life, but we definitely make better choices throughout our day. I think that's really empowering, actually.
Yeah.
It can be quite uplifting if thought about well.
Yeah. And I do think you can think yourself into total depression about the state of the
Oh,
universe.
you probably think about
probably
what's happening
did.
right now. You could be in fetal position and you're not getting out.
Which I already am.
There's a good term for...
Oh, yeah.
The climate theories.
Climate series, or
there's some term for like the breakdown that you have.
where you're like...
Yeah.
You get incredibly anxious and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I've had those days.
Yeah.
And you do, once you engage in the research, you can be so demoralizing and you're like, why would I even change my behavior? I was not going to do anything now. But, you know, I think COVID showed the change in the waterways from humans not, you know, like there are measurable changes that you're like, we showed ourselves. It does actually make a difference. We obviously won't go that drastic again necessarily, but it clearly does something. And you can't think that way about anything. Otherwise you'd never change anything.
No,
so.
Totally.
100%.
I have another question for you actually that's kind of a little bit related. So say a brand comes to you and they might be a big conglomerate. So big beast, and they might have changed something to make better steps in sustainability. And you're like, oh, awesome. That's great. They're making moves. Do you ever think about greenwashing in that context? Now, I'm not saying that they are greenwashing, but I'm just saying, does it go, do you think to yourself, are they greenwashing? How do I know? Is it up to me to work that out? Or am I supposed to take what they say by face value? Or
It's a really hard area because there is so much of that. And I think like one part of my brain is just like, can we just stop making a term for everything? Like 100%. There's literally a word and a condition and a label for everything, and like just calm down. It's just human behavior. Like we don't need another word, and then you have to go Google the word and then you're like, am I using it in a sentence right? And then it's like even more overwhelming. But I do think it is dangerous because there are consumers who, like, we're very lucky that we, you know, our whole demographic is particularly educated because we have access to the internet. We've grown up native to the digital landscape. We can do our own research and we feel comfortable discerning between rubbish and fact. And most of the time. But I think there are a lot of consumers who wouldn't know the difference. They wouldn't even know how to question the difference. Even if they didn't believe something, they'd be like, well, how am I going to tell if those people are lying or not? And it's a very fertile ground for total exploitation of certain people who will put their money behind what they think is sustainability and then not realise that they're not. And I think it's a really hard problem. Like it's but that's companies. Like there are big companies who will lie about lots of other things. It's not just greenwashing, it's anything washing, which is why the term really annoys me sometimes because I'm like, they wash you about everything. Like they'll just amp up whatever they can. If a company's going to exploit a consumer, they're going to exploit you about other things as well.
So true.
And I think we're in a much heightened time of transparency, which is good, which means it's harder, I think, for bigger companies at least. Like if a big multinational was really, really misstating things, I think they would probably be found out at some point. Or, you know, they generally sign up to global standards or things that are objectively verifiable, which make it a lot easier to check if they're actually doing those things. Even if they're like maybe embellishing a little bit, most of the time with like a big conglomerate, they've signed up to some treaty or some certification or something that you can go and Google and say, well, at least bare minimum, they're doing this and this and this. So it's a little bit easier to check. Or to just trust that like someone will call them out. Some person is part of the supply chain or some consumer's gone on a rant and like there are passionate people out there who'll unearth, you know, I think the smaller companies that don't have as much scrutiny, but that still could have the same influence and that still could make people, you know, believe something that is not necessarily true and then put their money behind it. I probably don't question it as much about bigger companies because of that. I kind of think there's enough checks and balances that like, don't be naive. Obviously they're going to put their best foot forward and keep that in mind, but it's better than nothing. And they're probably, you know, the bare minimum that they're doing are these standards and that's great. Maybe I'm a little bit, I tend to be a bit like take what people say at face value with an educated lens. But it's hard. If it's a smaller company, how do you verify that?
No, I think you're right. I definitely come from the place because I'm obviously part business owner, part consumer myself. I very much come from the place where I'm like, well, if you're telling me that that's what it is, I should be able to trust you and I should have that confidence in you. Like, why should I have to then go and research whether or not you're actually saying what you're saying is correct? So I think I personally, like my personal view is I think the responsibility sits with businesses, but
to show more transparency.
Yeah, just to be upfront. Yeah. And if you're not having...
And tell the truth.
Yeah, just tell the truth. Like, it is what it is, and then at least people can make their own decisions accordingly. Yeah. But I don't necessarily think the consumer has to go unpack all this research. And
because we're consuming so much. There's so many brands to have to do that. Yeah. And every single brand that you're engaging with, it's ridiculous.
Like an independent audit.
Yeah. If you're telling me I can compost it, cool, I can compost it. Why should I have to go and search if I can or if I can't?
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a lot easier now that, you know, a lot of people use, say, Hero Packaging, for example. Like they use a brand that people can go and verify that brand, and they're sort of the ones that, you know, they're not replicating. We're not like reinventing the wheel a lot of the time. There's brands that have that's their expertise. So you see this custom brands Hero Packaging and you go and look at Hero Packaging and like, you know, there's a lot of things that claims are easily verifiable. They say that this product is blah and you can go and check if it is or not. I think if they've said something really grand, like I can't even think of an example, but if they've said something really grand,
like these wipes dissolve, I'm just kidding.
or like you know, this is from the spring water of the blah blah blah. Like if it's something really obscure, you're probably gonna think, you're like a brand from Craigieburn, and like you did not go to Tibet and put that thing in the water. Like, you know, you can kind of like
get a feel.
That's
so funny.
But the problem is that comes from a place of education, so not everyone has as much confidence to make those decisions. But I think common sense you can kind of verify some things and be wary about others.
Yeah.
I don't think many companies that last are out there to seriously say we're sustainable, this is compostable, this thing's going to dissolve, let me charge you $50 and then you get home and it doesn't dissolve. Like they wouldn't have any return. Do you know what I mean? Like
no, you're right.
They wouldn't last very long.
I think if anything, greenwashing claims sometimes just come from naivety or like ignorance, because they'll think like glass is a really good example.
Yes.
Everybody's like, glass is recyclable, it's infinitely recyclable. Yes, it is.
If you use it,
but it's also infinitely recyclable if it's not painted. And most coloured glass is painted. So like black glass, not recyclable. Any obscure colour, it's only really like amber, green and clear that you can actually recycle. So again, I think some brands are like, no, but we're using glass, it's recyclable, and like we're good, and they don't know themselves.
Like, and it's also hard because there are times where you see labels and it's like gluten-free. Yeah. And it's like gluten-free tiles. And I'm like, no one thinks there's gluten in tiles. Like all tiles are gluten-free. You know what I mean?
Your skincare's gluten-free.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like they put things on things that are like,
I have no idea.
To make it, like you just see those stupid things that you're like, dude, my dishwashing liquid is gluten-free. Like I don't care. Celiacs are not going to have a problem. They're not going to drink this. I think there's a lot of that. Like there's a lot of making people who don't realise that it is by default gluten-free, or it doesn't matter if it is or not. I think that's a bit of greenwashing. But
that always makes me laugh. The clean beauty ones the clean beauty claims are always like a really good example. They'll be like, and this is SLS3, and people are like, yeah, it's SLS3, and I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah, what is?
Do you know what SLS is?
They're like,
guys? No, but apparently I don't need
Sodium lauryl sulfate.
Oh, hello.
She really knows.
She really is the smart one.
But like the average person doesn't know, and they're like, what's a phthalate? Like you don't know.
But then they think they don't. They're like, oh no, I couldn't possibly, and it's like, well, no, it's fine.
Yes.
Such a silly claim.
But and that's, you know, but you can't blame them. Like that's what they've got to. They've got to put their best foot forward. Like
they got to do something.
And then I think it is on you. Like if you want to know why it matters if there's an SLS or not, like then you can go, or what a paraben is. Like you can go Google that. And if you're paying more for a paraben-free item, but you don't know what paraben is, like that's kind of your problem. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So it's hard. There's part of the time where it's our responsibility and part where it's theirs.
Definitely. Okay, one last question. So we are obviously strong believers in the way to create change in the sustainability space and create a space that's inviting to all people. We need to encourage those who don't feel educated, who don't feel like they're doing enough, to still be a part of that conversation. So I guess I'm wondering, do you have any advice, or what would you tell to people in your life who are like, I'm too scared to engage or have these conversations? What would you say to them to get them involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's just taking the pressure off those people and the intimidation away from them as much as possible, because even knowing the word SLS makes you sound like a fluffy asshole. It's like, I know all about
I know, me sitting here being like, I don't know what that means. I knew you'd be saying like, you two.
I know what the acronym is. I don't know what it means, but like I sound smart. So it can already put distance between you and them. So I think the most important thing in any kind of change is like go incremental and make them feel comfortable with it being incremental, because that's what appeals to me when like someone who's a serious expert. We've had lots of people in the CCA community who are really, really educated and who are incredibly diligent and strict in the sustainability standards that they apply to their own life, and they're amazing when they say, look, we've just seen this, you've said this, but this like they'll correct something, but they do it so gently and they do it in a way that's like, just so you know, actually this blah blah blah. I can't even think of an example, but when people do it in a way that's like for your benefit, it's not to make you feel dumb, it's to help you next time, it's not expecting you to like radically change everything straight away. You feel like the easiest thing anyone in the world can do is get a keep cup.
Yeah.
Like just start small, start with that, and then you can feel virtuous. And then when you feel comfortable remembering to take your keep cup and washing it and like, and measure how many coffee cups you haven't used for that, then start something else, like one at a time. Don't do it all together. Find places like this podcast, for example. I feel like there are resources that you can use to learn more if you want to go a little bit harder that, again, aren't aggressive, that aren't overwhelming. There are places where you go where you're going to find information, you're going to feel really shit about yourself. So don't go to those ones. Go to the ones that it's like anything. Yeah. Like if you want to go to the gym, we all know what our best results come from. Like some people need to be screamed at. Some people need to be hugged and nurtured. Some people need to be like physically whipped into gear. Some people need to be like, light touch. And I think find what really turns you off, and aggression really turns me off. Or like over-education really turns me off, because I'm like, I can't compete with you. Like I'm not going to listen. I want to listen, but you're level 25.
You're not meeting me where I'm at.
Like help me come to somewhere. So find, the podcasts like this, the brands like this who embrace your learning rather than make you feel like an idiot, and do it bit by bit. And I think the more that you get comfortable with the resources you have around you, the more you'll learn and the more you'll feel less out of your depth as you add, like, it's like an arsenal, right? Like you're building small little tactics each day, and habits take a really long time to change. So anyone who expects themselves to become an environmental eco warrior overnight, you can't become anything overnight except tired. Like,
so true.
You set really reasonable expectations as well.
And also, just saying that, like, I feel like I go through a roller coaster of habits as well, where I'm like really, I go through 4 months of using my keep cup, and then I don't know, I lose it. I buy one coffee cup, and then I'm in that bad habit for like a few months, and like not being too harsh on myself and being like, okay, that's okay, maybe start working towards getting another keep cup. But that's okay as well, because I think sometimes as soon as you break a bad habit, you're like, oh, there's no going back.
That's so true. Or like I didn't use my keep cup on the 2nd of February, so then I won't use it again till the 1st of March. I'll start in March. Like that's me.
Yes.
I think just gently, and I think it's really, really hard when you do, if there's someone in your network who is extremely, extremely advanced, like it's hard to be around them, because you sometimes feel, I have a lot of friends.
But a lot of those people.
And I'm ashamed. I'm like, don't come in my bedroom in case there's plastic in there. Like, we might have used a plastic water bottle. And like, I try not to, but sometimes I forget. Sometimes I need to hydrate. Like, I don't want to UTI.
I was going to say, what if you're, I was going to say, it happens. What if you're out at the gym, you didn't have your drink bottle, what are you going to do? Pass out on the treadmill?
Like it's, it's, I think, a gentle, kind, slow, no pressure, like a little bit of pressure, but not no beating anyone up.
Not like unrealistic targets. I feel like if anything, I'd draw some parallels from you and try and seize the yay and the joy in making this decision. So it's not like necessarily a barrier. It's like, no, I'm doing it because I want to do it.
Because I want to.
And I'm happy about that. And it feels good about me.
If you change that mentality as well,
is because more optimistic.
If you make it a chore, then you're just going to hate sustainability.
100%.
You're going to be like, this is a dick. Like, just go away. Like, I just want to live my life how I want to live it.
Sustainability. This is a dick.
This is an actual dick. But like, sometimes when you don't have your
I
kid
know.
coming, you gotta go home and you're like,
100%.
this is an actual dick. Like, why do I care? But you
so
just
true.
frame it a little bit differently of like what a privilege it is that
Yes.
something I do can make a difference. And it's not hard for me. It's just like a change in behavior. And then I feel good about my contribution to the world instead of like, I'm, I just bought 75 plastic water bottles in a row when I could have used a recyclable water bottle. Like, I think, it's a hard area, and people are really mean to themselves and then psych themselves out, and then it's like a total mind fuck. Excuse my French.
It's a total mind fuck.
So once you acknowledge that, and then you're okay with like really good, not a great month, good month,
back on top.
Yeah, it's like overall this year I did more than 12 bad months. So like coming in leaps and bounds.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, great. I think that's wonderful advice.
I think you have just been an absolute joy and a blessing to talk to today.
Oh, you guys.
And we love and adore you, and we cannot thank you enough for coming on Normalise Not Knowing and sharing more of your beautiful journey and your insights. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. I can't wait to have you on the other side.
Yes, please. Yes.
Yay.